So, a bit of a roundup today from the business engagement team, and we're just going to be sharing a few bite-sized sections covering topics from PowerApp training, Centre of Excellence, M365 survey results, and the app development following the fantastic event at GMP in October. We've also got Alex from Greater Manchester Police who's joining us and to be talking about his experience collaborating across force. And at this point, all 5 regions have had their first regional meetings with the business engagement team.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So really what I wanted to talk through was the PowerApps in development. We have had since the Manchester event and the opportunity to work with a number of forces and ultimately contract through Microsoft a number of gold partners and senior sponsors to provide some Power Apps that we are working collaboratively on. So choosing to work with a number of different forces, gather requirements and meet those operational and back office requirements and needs that have been highlighted and surfaced to us in the Manchester event back in last year.
So Gemma, you're first. Could you give us an update about the fleet management app?
Yes, of course, Dave. So as Rich described there, there's a number of things in development. So we've had lots of conversations in recent weeks around vehicle checks and fleet management. And sort of what's come to light is forces are looking at this area, lots of different forces, different parts of the process. So BCH are currently in the process of piloting version 2 of their vehicle checking app. Hampshire are looking at developing something more around the fleet management side of things. But we've had lots of conversations with lots of forces that have got this particular area of business either on their list to do or they're starting to look at it now. So really what the next steps with this area are around a working group. So we've got a Microsoft partner, gold partner Kainos, that we're looking to set up a bit of a working group so we can understand the requirements and get a real full picture of what's required. I guess the ask today would be if any force is looking at vehicle checks or fleet management or it's on their to-do list and they want to get involved, please reach out to us. We want to get a real good understanding of what's happening nationally so that anything that we do develop is going to be a benefit for everybody and we can put it into the solutions catalogue and all forces can then use it and we really get this right and it will be a benefit.
Thanks, Gemma. So, Rich, you've been looking at Scene Guard in particular, but you'll be able to pick up the one on DVPN as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been working with a couple of forces, particularly Greater Manchester and West Yorkshire, around the particularly challenging area around domestic violence protection notices. It's currently captured via a paper process or Word document. We've identified that there are some challenges in terms of data entry, and those really are concerning. Clearly, if we some of the research we did with the forces in question, there can be up to 30 to 40% of notices being returned to an officer to complete some missing information. That's really concerning because every one of those individual DVPNs, there is a victim sat behind that. And clearly we want the most effective process that will work first time, every time. So we think that a Power App may well be able to pick up some of these errors and issues in terms of data quality. So we're working very closely with both Greater Manchester and West Yorkshire and the gold partner TISCI to try and develop and devise an electronic DVPN, a Power App. And some of the back-end processes sit alongside that, so using the Power Platform to really automate a lot of the process and make it really streamlined, make it really efficient for the front line and really deliver some the best possible service for some of our most vulnerable victims of crime.
So that's great on the DVPN. So what about on the Scene Guard?
Yeah, you should see on the right hand side the crime scene log. Actually, it's something that reminds me of my old days in South Yorkshire. It looks very similar to the document we had in place, but currently again another system where officers are managing a scene, and they will do that with a paper booklet. Currently, I don't think there's many forces that have gone off paper for this particular activity. And there's some challenges around that, some real significant challenges. Firstly, we all know if you're an operational officer, you'll be carrying these booklets in your bag, in your kit bag, and that is often some of these bits of kit and bits of paperwork are missing out of the kit bag, so it ends up officers use pocket notebooks or some of their e-notebooks on their mobile device, and then entries have to be copied back into the log retrospectively, which can lead to error and lack of continuity. There can be, and we've had feedback saying there's a number of scene logs in circulation, so we can clearly have differences and discrepancies in the data. Then when the log is shut down, the scene's shut down, that log needs to be gathered up. There may be a number of logs, a number of pages to those logs, and they all need added into Homes or to local RMS, which is time consuming and again can lead to error. Often, and I've seen it many times, entries are illegible, and because it's operational policing, these logs can get damaged by the rain or the weather. So clearly the evidence and data that's captured it can be compromised. Quite often data is missing, so we miss individuals coming in to and from the scene, or whether there's a handover, there's a miss of information. So again, we're trying to tackle that. And the ability to identify key activities at the scene can be buried in a long list of information. So really important for us to try and make sure that we can take snapshots at different times and points in that scene management. And finally, the log's only ever visible to the logist, and so it's not available to the SIO or the investigation team until that scene's shut down, and that could be sometime later. So we want to tackle a lot of these things. So what we have done is work with TISC, as we say, to build out the log. We're lucky enough to have a bit of a demo of the solution on screen there on the right hand side, but what it will bring is the ability to store those guides, store guides and information for staff performing the scene guarding roles. So they've got that information to hand, almost like an aide memoir. We'll be able to capture SIO briefings and share updates from the investigation, so that officers on the scene have the most accurate information to hand. There'll be ability to do digital handshakes from staff to supervisors of a scene, and then of course the ability to record photography, video and even sketch maps from the point of view of a cordon officer. We'll also be able to use the Active Directory to record staff interacting with the scene, so we'll always capture the right individual going in and out of the scene and those on cordon points. And we'll also have the ability to export the whole log into Homes and or the RMS. And again, the ability to just snapshot a log at any point to see who's on the cordon, who's gone into the scene, and give that real clarity to the defence and prosecution around key moments in that investigation, maybe that golden hour. So again, just some screenshots there. It's all in development, so this may well change significantly, but you can kind of see where we're going to with this type of activity. But it's a really exciting piece of work. David.
So Gemma, perhaps you can just give us a quick summary for the outcomes of the regional meetings so far, and Richard will come to us with some of the results of the survey work that's been going on.
Yes, thank you, Dave. So just briefly, really, you mentioned that we've all had our regional meetings, our first one, and they really on the back of the GMP event in October, it was really clear that forces wanted to share and collaborate more with each other. So we set about, working out how to do that. So we've all had our first meeting. It was really to set the scene of where we want to go with this and how we can collaborate better. So within that, and Rich will come on to talk about the survey that we introduced there to try and get a better understanding of the Microsoft 365 landscape, as well as how are we going to move the meetings forward, how often do we want to have them. So we're busy working out how we're going to do the next ones and what we're going to put onto that agenda. So I don't know if we want to discuss the 365 survey now.
That'd be great. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you, Gemma and Dave. Just to roll back a little bit, we had, we have as a team had numbers of discussions about Force's journey through the 365 adoption process. We've been trying to help them as best we can. It's clear that there are challenges in every force, but some are doing better than others, as you would naturally expect. It's also clear that there are some common sticking points as well. Now, following those discussions, we felt that forces would maybe benefit with aligning to different forces to achieve different benefits. And that's really the meaning of true collaboration, working with partners right across the UK to try and resolve challenges and issues. So what we're trying to do is identify through data forces that could act as mentors to other forces. We could also identify forces that are peers. And again, similar to that most similar force principle, lean on colleagues from other forces to try and tackle common challenges, so work through the issue together. Now, we've been reaching out to a number of forces over the last couple of months to gather data on 8 key areas of development, really cornerstones, if you like, of 365 adoption and development. And I really want to thank everyone that has already supplied some data to start pulling this information together. But really, it's quite, if you haven't completed the survey, it's a really simple survey to complete, 5 to 10 minutes maximum, I promise you. And the data really is about yes, no's, quick answers around some of those 8 cornerstones of information we want. We now have data from around 50% of Home Office forces, which is fantastic. And we'll be reaching out to more forces over the next week or two to try and get as complete a picture as possible. And the principle will be that once we've captured that data, once we've crunched the data, we will then play that back to forces and try and start matching up forces with each other and try and really bring them on that journey. I think it's worthwhile just talking as well, just briefly about some of the early findings as well. We've looked at the information from 50% of those forces, and it's clear to see that there are 3 maturity states. So we feel it will be possible to align mentors and mentees. We definitely think this is achievable. We've also seen that federation with other forces hasn't progressed as well as we'd liked in the last few months, and there are potentially 2 issues: risk around federation perceived by that local force, and also some technical blocks. And what we're going to try and do is see if we can link federated forces with non-federated forces and try and unblock that local position where we can. We're also seeing a growing appetite for guest access, which is really encouraging and hugely positive. And again, I think we will see that progress over the next few months with more and more forces exploiting the opportunities that guest access brings. We see a big challenge around the low levels of SharePoint adoption, which just highlights how much of a challenge it is and how much a piece of work that represents for local forces. And again, we may well be able to identify forces that can lead on this piece of work to support other forces that are finding it a challenge. No doubt more patterns will emerge as we gather more data. I'm not sure if you forces supply data, but again, if you want to help us with that journey, help us supply your data, please just reach out to engagement managers or submit a contact form, as David's already outlined. And that's really it. We've got some good aspiration for this. We think that there's some real good data that can help you locally to tackle some of the challenges and really get the best out of the platform.
Thanks, Richard. Now I'm going to introduce a familiar face to many of us and our joint host when we had the fantastic event. Alex, could you perhaps reflect on some of the collaboration work and some of the impact that you've been seeing from that, from the force point of view?
Hi, Dave. Hello to everybody. Yes, so I think first thing first was a huge thank you to everybody for attending the conference. When you host these sorts of things, you never quite know how it's going to go, and to say it exceeded my expectations was a bit of an understatement, and that's reflection on the people who attended, nothing to do with us organising it. It was just really good to see that everybody got more out of it than anticipated. For GMP, the highlight for me of the day was sitting next to Len Horton. I don't think just sitting next to Len Horton was the highlight, but when we mentioned that use of force was a bit of a conundrum for GMP, and he quickly tapped away on his already open laptop and said, "Is this what you're looking for?" and showed me a use of force app that they'd built. So we've taken that from Warwickshire and we've amended it to be GMP-esque, because although it was ADR compliant, guess what? Every force wants it to be suitable for them, and we are just in the final stages of polishing that off and just making those changes, and the go live date for that is planned for the 25th of April. We've been beavering away on a neighbourhood policing app, which is for recording what PCSOs and neighbourhood officers do during their day-to-day. So it's not a time and motion study, but it's about recording minimum 15 minutes worth of work. But what is it they're actually doing? We've never had anything in GMP. I don't know what other forces are like, but we've never had anything that's enabled us to record there and then what our staff and work in the neighbourhood are actually doing. And I've just had a demo of the Power BI dashboard that the supervisors were going to have access to show what that does for people. And now in terms of collaboration, where do we go with that? Well, the business lead for GMP has been in contact with his equivalents in Devon and Cornwall, and on Friday I'm demonstrating the app to Devon and Cornwall so that they can see what we've got, and we'll be able to supply that app to them free of charge. And the same offer, you know, I'm going to be coming to PDS and saying, can you please put this on the catalogue so that people can download it. There would be a cost for the dashboard because we've paid a company to build it. We have regular collaboration with Lancs, which is Brill, that supports stuff around the DVPN. That was a brick wall that I'd been banging my head against for about a year. So the fact that PDS have come on board with that and supporting us with that, because it was something that I'd just not been able to unpick. So being able to bring in our business side, so the technical side, we're not involved in that in GMP. We've not got the capacity to do that, but our business side are there to give their input so that, you know, it's not just a West Yorkshire app. It's going to be an app that's suitable for all forces. And I think that's the key thing for me, is having those conversations with your equivalents in other forces, leaning on them, saying, I'm stuck, or I've got this. Can you share that? Yeah, that's where we're up to with GMP. Any questions, David?
No, we'll come to questions a little bit later on, Alex, but it is just fantastic to reflect that we've actually got more in common than we've got apart, and the fact that we can work together on these solutions just shows the value, you know. And as we begin to change the way we actually commission work, we'll be challenging those IP issues as well, so that we are commissioning it so that we may end up paying a little bit more in the front, but we get the IP so policing can benefit as well. And that's the sort of work that we're doing a great deal on at the moment. So there's a lot been going on, and I knew we'd have too much for this update. But Gemma, we've done our first PowerApp training, which was kindly hosted by our colleagues at the Met Police. And what were your reflections and what were the outcomes of that particular session?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. So yeah, we facilitated that training on the 21st of March. And it was targeted at those sort of new to app development. So it was an introductory course. And in 2 days, we had registrations from 30 people for 12 places. So it was very much in demand, and it's highlighted the need for something in this particular area. So we had 11 forces represented on the course, and it was delivered online via Teams, which worked really well. So there was opportunities for everybody to follow along, creating an app, follow along in their own tenant and their own environment. And if there were any issues, it was very easy to just, you know, pull people to one side, have separate calls to address any issues. Although there weren't that many, everyone seemed to follow along really, really well. By the end of the training day, everyone had a device ordering app that they'd built, and it used Outlook, SharePoint, Excel, Power Automate and PowerApps, and each of the steps was followed. Really positive feedback. We're now in the process of reviewing that feedback, looking at what worked well, looking at what needs to improve, and then considering how we actually move something like this forward, because as I said, there's clearly a demand for it, there's a gap there, so that'll be the next step. So basically watch this space to see what's going to come along in the future.
Thanks, Gemma. And I'm going to go over to Esther next. And you mentioned Centre of Excellence in your update there, Gemma, and it's one of the subjects that's been coming up at regionals. But that's not the only thing that's coming up at the next set of regional meetings. Could you perhaps give us a quick flavour of what's coming up?
Yeah, thanks, David. So I just wanted to to pick up on some of the earlier comments about regionals. So we are now in the process of sending out the invites for the next sessions. I think the first one is just after the Easter break. So I just really wanted to talk about a couple of things we're hoping to get on the agenda, just to whet your appetite slightly. So the firstly, it's Centre of Excellence. I know that more and more you're starting to talk about governance and implementing your centres of excellence, and more comments and questions coming up about it all the time. So lots of themes like wondering where to start, how you might go about starting this piece of work. So to try and help with those conversations and give you a better understanding of the reasons why, as well as how you might want to go about it, we've arranged for Microsoft to give a 25-minute or so input at each regional meeting. So they'll look at how to take you through the understanding of what a Power Platform Centre of Excellence is, how it can align with your force's Power Platform strategy. During the session, they will touch on how you can manage the governance, set policies to manage your data and when creating apps, and report on your app performance. The other input, and following on from the very well attended webinar last week, we were going to invite Tim Morey from our Cyber Policy and Standards Leads to do a follow-up on that webinar. So why they're important to all, as well as give you a chance to answer those questions, because we had too many to get through last week. So this will be a good opportunity for you to ask those questions that you might have about Centre of Excellence or the standards in your smaller regional groups. The invitations, like I said, have either gone out or will be going out shortly, so please feel free to forward them to any of your interested colleagues. So maybe perhaps your ISOs for the cyber standards element of it. We'll circulate the agenda nearer the time so we can give you those time details, but also just a reminder that our webinars, like those cyber standard webinars, are available to watch and replay on our website. We had over 100,000 views last year, so all very good. So yeah, over to you, Dave.
Thanks, Esther. Now we'll get into the questions. So there's a couple of them have come in, and there's a couple around the Scene Guard in particular. And Richard, there's a question here about assume the Scene Log app would require premium license to enable export to homes on RMS. And there's one about the Wi-Fi as well. So perhaps you could quickly address those two for me.
Yeah, dispel some myths here. We're absolutely working within the envelope of the MOU, so E3, E5 licenses. So the export will be a PDF file, for example, that the officer or its SIO, whoever, can just upload into their RMS or into their the home system. So it won't be a direct connection, but it will be ability to download and upload it effectively. Again, we could have gone full whizzy bang with some maps and integrated maps. So that would include premium connectors. So we haven't gone down that route, but we are exploring the free license to the maximum. In terms of the Wi-Fi, yes, if you are capturing data, entering data or retrieving data, then as a general principle, you will need some connectivity to your device. There is the ability to cache data to the application, but it's fairly limited in its scope. So it is worth considering if you're in a rural force. There may be some challenges, although I do think connectivity is getting much better these days in those particularly rural environments. But as a principle, Wi-Fi probably will be required.
That's great. And there's a comment here from Len, who had the name check from Alex. Just to update Alex that Warwickshire have made some changes to the use of force minimum viable product to meet the new ADR, and they'll be sharing that again. So that's fantastic. But again, it looks like your team have been doing some work on that anyway, Alex, haven't they?
Yeah, so we've got SMEs for absolutely everything, haven't we? And they've been checking in with them to make sure that it does what they want. I'm pretty happy with it, actually. For once, I've actually got a really happy user and customer, so it's going quite well. It's going. I think that's one of the big takeaways for me. So one of the other solutions we're looking at is threats to life. So we have a pretty good threats to life solution built in Excel, which we've been using for 5 or 6 years, 7 years, but it's come to end of life. It needs to be updated. So the chap that's building that was the inspector that managed that process, and he's working with somebody who's a fellow geek to build it. So if anybody's doing threats to life, don't, because it is amazing what they're building. You know, when you look at something and they've demoed it to us twice, and every single time they've blown my socks off with it. But what they're doing is they're having regular checkpoints with the business and a user group and a focus group. And I think that's one of the things that a piece of advice I would give to people is take your customer on your journey with you, so that you don't suddenly present them with something that's a fait accompli, because guess what? They're just going to go, I don't like that. I don't like that bit. I don't like that bit. And all of a sudden the bits they don't like, of course, aren't the easy bits to fix. They're the difficult bits to fix. So yeah, take your customer on your journey with you.
Thanks, Alex. Now we've come to the bottom of the hour, and it is that time again that we've got a lot to go through, and we'll carry on picking up the questions, and we'll pick up the feedback from Cumbria about the black spots in terms of the black areas in terms of signal. We'll feed that into the process that we're building. Next couple of webinars, I'm just going to pop on screen now. So we haven't got any live webinars for the next couple of weeks, so it is your opportunity to replay. And I really would recommend people looking at the engagement and contact tracking webinar. Just put the slot in your diary for next Wednesday, replay that webinar. It is a real good signal of what's coming down the line in terms of our improving the way we build trust and confidence. Obviously, accessibility will continue to be a focus, and we're just planning an accessibility workshop for the next couple of months as well. And then Stream, there has been some significant changes to Stream over the last months, and it impacts the way that we are using 365 SharePoint and moving video. And we need to get this ready for the Viva elements that are coming down the line very soon. And then end of April, we've got an update on video-enabled policing, where they're actually now live with the latest product. They'll give you some overview of how it's landing in forces as well. So a lot coming up in the next month or so as we continue through the journey around 365 and all the other technologies that are going on at the moment. So I really want to thank you for all the questions and commentary that's been going through today. I think there's going to be an ongoing conversation between Len and Alex. I think there already is the message there. And so thanks for joining us. I hope you can join us again in the next couple of weeks. And I do apologise for the slight technical issues and the fact we lost one of our speakers just as she went on to speak. But hopefully we've covered all the content we needed to. So thanks for joining us today.